I'm going to say that in 2021, energy management is the new time management. And what I mean by that is we all know we have the same amount of time in the day. There's no difference for you than it is for me. Not necessarily how well we manage the time, it's how we manage our energy throughout the day. And I think people are more in touch with things that are energy depleting and things that are energy accelerating than maybe we have been in the past. So let's be proactive. Let's understand what drives our energy forward, what pulls it away, and plan our days and weeks and activities so that we have energy left at the end of the day. I forget who said this. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's make sure that you get the best of me, not what's left of me.
Welcome to Titans of Transition, featuring real-life stories, anecdotes, and inspiration about pivotal career moments from leaders who have been there.
Hey, Bob, welcome to Titans of Transition, episode number 2 with you.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty exciting, Joe. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's been, well over a year since we actually recorded episode number 1 of Titans with you as my kickoff guest. But I didn't actually publish until I think it was July of 2020. So we were chatting back and forth on email, and some things were shifting around for you, some little change in emphasis, things of that nature. And we decided it might be a good idea to do a second episode. Also, you put out some great videos recently in the area of leadership that I think would be great to dig into and talk about. Obviously, the overarching emphasis for this podcast is transitions.
Right.
And I think, as we talked about before, sometimes people can have sort of a single point of view on what that means, just maybe shifting a job, but it's actually broader than that. So with that, why don't you tell us what has shifted in your thinking recently and prompted some of the movement towards these videos?
Well, there's been plenty of transition over the course of the last year and a half, no question. We met in Broomfield, Colorado before the pandemic really hit, and people were still kind of going about their life in a normal, quote unquote, kind of way, and really weren't thinking about all the stuff that we had to deal with when it came to thinking slow about stuff and reimagining how we were going to go through work. And, the pandemic is easing. States are opening and people are getting back to more real life. I don't know about you, Joe, but I've actually been on a few plane trips and, done some fun things. My wife, Debbie, and I actually went to a movie and sat next to strangers in a theater without wearing masks. It was, anyway, but some things have kind of altered for people, me included, when it came to what does it mean to reemerge and transitions for a lot of people. I don't want to go back to the office. Or if I go back to the office, there's going to be different rules associated with it. And, stuff I'm reading, you probably are too, about people are just quitting instead of going back to the same old life that they had. And the transition that we're going through right now I think it's incredibly healthy as a population, as a culture, to say, what do we really want now? And, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it kind of brings back to mind the whole paradigm concept where when you have a major shift like this, which was brought on in this case by a pandemic, you have the go back to zero rule. So when everything gets disrupted like that, it puts you in a position as an individual and also as a company and leadership team to completely rethink the way you've been doing business before. So I think it kind of, and in my conversations with CIOs that I facilitate a private group of CIOs, and of course they were dealing with the pandemic big time, right, with technology, but also trying to support an agile workforce. And now as they look at coming back in a hybrid mode, and it's very dependent upon the senior leadership, the CEO, what they want to do. But employees have already moved in many cases away from the large city centers. They're not going to be willing to move back in many cases. And so it's putting a lot of change in place from an individual and a company standpoint. So I think that supports what you're saying.
Yeah, most definitely. You're right. A lot of people have moved to smaller towns. Cost of living is lower. Choose to work remotely. So anyway, it's what do we want now? It's a real opportunity for us, as you say, go back to zero. It's a chance to say, what do we want at this point? So one of the big areas that I've been focusing on and my team has been focusing on is what healthy leadership looks like as we're moving into the future. The rules that we had before about walk around, talk to people, get out of your office, be present. Yeah, things like that are different today. So anyway, you're right. We put together these videos. We have a bunch of them. The website is teamtipton.com/videos. Try to make it easy for people to go. And there's a series there about being a healthier leader. There's also a series there about leading through crisis. Some of the things that we've learned over the last year and a half, and before that too. But here's one idea, Joe, that is a significant, I think, departure from the way things might have been in 2019 or before. We used to focus on time management. And that was a primary goal. I mean, and the number of classes, the number of videos, the number of trainings you can go through, all helping you to do a better job with managing your time. Well, I'm going to say that in 2021, energy management is the new time management. And what I mean by that is it's, we all know we have the same amount of time in the day. There's no difference for you than it is for me. Not necessarily how well we manage the time. It's how we manage our energy throughout the day. Mm. And I think people are more in touch with things that are energy depleting and things that are energy accelerating than maybe we have been in the past. So let's be proactive. Let's understand what drives our energy forward, what pulls it away, and plan our days and weeks and activities so that we have energy left at the end of the day. I forget who said this. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's make sure that you get the best of me, not what's left of me.
That's a great quote. We'll
Yeah.
have to figure out who that is and put it in the notes.
Right. It isn't me. I wish I was smart enough to say something like that. But yeah, what is left of you at the end of the day? And in a lot of cases, what's left is worn out. It's completely tired, and there's no time left for yourself personally or your family or whatever. So I'm a bit on a mission personally to help people navigate that dynamic much more effectively. So yeah,
there's multiple dimensions to that, right? I mean, I think when you're in the middle of the situation we've had the past year, we hear a lot about Zoom fatigue, but that's just the very top level kind of observation one can make, right? That they're in meetings and in Zoom constantly, online like this, but there's so much more to it. I mean, I imagine there's, what are the things you do that energize you versus the things that drag you down? I mean, as an example, what are your prime times of the day to work and structuring your work around that? What are the best times for you to spend with your loved ones, Mm-hmm. And sort of an antiquated idea, I'll say it's antiquated, was the whole idea of work-life balance. Well, how does that fit into that? I mean, I'd be interested in your thoughts in those areas, I guess, to start it off.
Yeah, well, work-life balance is a myth. It's a little bit like a broken clock is right twice a day. It's another one of those things that isn't mine but belongs to somebody. Yeah, we kind of do this. We're up and down, and at that point when we pass one way or the other, maybe we have work-life balance. But it felt for a lot of people during the pandemic, it wasn't so much working from home, it was living at work. And the idea that boundaries are so hard to maintain and the pressure to be on and all of that, just work-life balance, no, not really. I like to look at it differently. In fact, I think about it as an intentionality, and it speaks back to the way we manage our energy. So think of it this way. We actually have a game that we have adapted or built. I'm not sure there's anything new under the sun, but it's this idea of the energy you have available for you is represented by a deck of cards. So you have 52 units of energy available for you throughout the day. In some cases, you can do energy accelerating things like take a walk or meditate or spend time with someone that you really enjoy. For an introvert like me, it's being quiet. For an extrovert, it's being with people. But find, there's ways that you can actually add some cards back to your deck. But let's just say you have 52 units to use during the day. How are you going to plan your day? What are you going to do? Well, you look at this meeting that you have. Let's say it's with your CPA or, I don't know, you're doing something in my mind that would be energy depleting. Well, I'm probably not going to schedule 4 energy depleting activities in the same morning or in the same day even. I'm going to spread them out. Yeah. And if it's something that's really challenging, I'm going to give myself some time intentionally on my calendar. I'm going to block it out so that I can take a walk or I can do something to actually at least keep my energy level, but not deplete it further. And this is where work-life balance comes in. It's a matter of saying, what do I prefer? What do I choose? What do I intentionally go after when it comes to the activities that I put into my calendar, that I put into my day? So I'll give you an example about one of those things. My wife, Debbie, and I have been happily married for 42 years. It's hard to believe that I can be old enough to be married for 42 years, but it's true. And one of the things that we set aside years ago in terms of an intentional activity was lunch on Thursdays. Well, today is Thursday, Joe, and we're going to go to lunch today. We've maintained that even during the pandemic. We tried to have lunch together. We didn't get to go out a lot, but it's an intentional thing that we do, and it's a energy accelerating activity. So anyway, that's a quick idea about the card game and how that
kind of gets a whole new spin on the idea of prioritization, right? I mean, I was just thinking as you were going through the putting cards back in your deck, and really there's decisions here about return on your energy investment. Is this something that I even want to spend any cards in my deck on at all?
Right.
I've been going through that process myself. I tend to chase a lot of rabbits of interest, and before too long, I have way too many. I'm oversubscribed. So then I have to sit down and go, why am I doing this activity, or why did I get involved in this thing? In which case, I'm making a decision, I guess, to use your analogy, that I'm not going to spend any cards in those areas.
Yeah. Well, you bring up an interesting concept. That's a concept of distractions and our relationship with distractions. So back to the time management sort of a way of looking at things. It's any time spent on distraction is wasting time. It's not productive time. You need to get back to doing and focusing on stuff. Well, I've sat through a lot of those presentations, and they're all about jamming more doing into your calendar. And I guess I have a very different relationship with distractions. I actually set aside time on my calendar actively every day to be distracted.
Yeah. To
pursue the purple squirrels and go down the rabbit holes. And I find it therapeutic. I find it really enjoyable because I'm a curious type of individual. I've got a very active mind, and rather than, belittling myself because I can't focus in that time period, hey, I just set aside some time to chase purple squirrels.
Interesting. But you have blocked a certain chunk of time to allow yourself to explore and let in other possibilities. So that's a very interesting strategy. It's not to say that it's bad to quote, be distracted, but you put them in sort of the best place for you. And going back to your energy sort of framing of this discussion, you're allocating a certain number of energy cards, to allow you to do that. And I think the other advantage to that too is, and I really like this book, Deep Work. I don't know if you've seen it. Came out a few years ago. It really kind of blew out the whole notion of multitasking, which, we can't multitask really.
No such thing.
And we keep shuffling between things. Computers do that. It's called time slicing back in the day, right?
Right.
And used to tune parameters to decide what your foreground response was going to be versus your background response. Sorry, I diverged myself. But anyway, I think it kind of helps you then, if you want to focus on one thing, by making time in your schedule and allocating time for you to do that exploration or that distraction activity. I think that helps you in both areas.
Yeah. Well, I use it as a reward mechanism because I really enjoy it. And, I have to sit and focus. I have to dig in. I probably suffer from adult ADHD at some level, but I use it as a reward mechanism. So I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm working on a very large report for a client. It's lots of insights and implications and lots of data. We have a team health and performance assessment instrument that we've built, and it gets into all these different dimensions of the organization's health and how that translates into performance. Well, I really like that. Part of my personality likes digging in and pulling out the really interesting salient points and so on. But I can't do that for long. So what I do is I set aside a milestone or a breakpoint. And if you get this part done, hey, Bob, you get to spend 30 minutes being distracted, chasing some purple squirrels. And that's where the therapeutic side of it comes in. And I guess self-awareness. I'm more productive that way. And I don't belittle myself anymore. I don't berate myself for not staying on task for 8 or 10 or 12 hours straight. I don't think very many people can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess before when I was talking about deciding not to spend any time on something, and I might have framed it as distraction, it's more about once I explored an idea, I have a tendency to commit on an idea that without a concept of how many cards I have to use, right? And then I get oversubscribed, and then I need to make a decision, or it's going to impact the things that are really more important to me from an overall life perspective or a legacy perspective, or things of that nature. So interesting. How does this play into sort of your leadership coaching that I know you're doing a bit more of these days? Some of these things that have come into your thinking more recently.
Well, I think it's central. And that's one of the things I just love doing, Joe, is helping individuals become the next best iteration of themselves, wherever they are, wherever they're going. One of the things that's important about coaching is you don't have some predefined endpoint for someone. You help them with the next thing. So just this week, a very concrete and tangible example, I was working with someone, and they basically had been so adrenalized, so stressed out over a circumstance. I had to take my plan for the session and basically throw it away and focus specifically on what was right in front of me. And when we're adrenalized, when we're operating from a very high level of stress, our brains are wired to limit our choices. We basically get 3: fight, flight, or freeze. Those are the 3 choices that we are given when we're operating under a tremendous amount of stress. So what I did with this individual is help them pull it apart, be able to understand root cause as opposed to symptoms, dig into the things that push them into this high stress, adrenalized environment that really limited their choices. And after, a few minutes of talking about the energy of stress and how that affects us, you could see them visibly relax and start to consider alternatives to what was causing so much stress. And it was a big deal. It was multiple priorities coming from somewhere else. The proverbial boss, or bosses in this case, giving you multiple number one priorities, and you don't have time to do them all. Which do you choose and why? Well, here's what it came down to with this individual. And this is a tough one for me too. I don't know if it is for you, Joe. This is really tough. The homework that I gave this person over the next month before we see each other is they have to ask for help once a day.
Mm-hmm.
They have to intentionally ask someone for help. Oh, my coach gave me that feedback a while ago. And after 30 days of doing it, my energy around asking for help was completely different. But the first few days were brutal.
Yeah.
So
there's a big lever there.
Well, it's huge.
It's huge.
I don't know how long it took me. I think it takes most people some trips around the sun. You and I are becoming the proverbial old guys here, but some trips around the sun to realize that asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. It's practical.
Yeah.
You know, why get augured in? Why have circular self-talk? It's not practical. So it's a very concrete and recent example of how this shows up in the coaching work that I do, and also how we help organizations move forward. When your self-talk becomes circular and your options are fight, flight, or freeze, you're not going to be very productive, nor are you going to be very happy or healthy. So stand next to yourself, right? Stand over 2 or 3 feet and observe and say, what's happening with that person? How does that feel? And then when things go sideways, maybe ask someone for help.
Yeah, I mean, that's there's another book title out called I think it's Soundtracks right now that's just hit. That I think it speaks to this idea. It's a different name for the tapes that you play over and over again in your mind. And I think for people, it's certainly true as I was a young manager, and then even continued to be a challenge through my career of not asking for help, because there was an innate sense that if you ask for help, as you said, it's a weakness. And you never want to expose the fact that you have some, Achilles heel in any area whatsoever. I mean, you may think there's practical reasons because you don't want anybody else shining a spotlight on them, but really it's this tape that we play over and over again, that maybe it was based upon conditioning in our youth, maybe not, but it really does not serve us well at all, because if we want results for our organization or ourselves, you have to get help. You can't be an expert in everything. You can't do, even if you're expert in many areas, you don't have the time to cover all things. And, you're not an individual contributor as well, in many cases. The people you're coaching are senior leadership. And so it's interesting. Some of these things that seem fundamental are the very roadblocks that everyone has. And the sooner we admit them, I think the better we can move forward in a better iteration of ourselves, to put it in your language.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of my 3-year-old granddaughter who lives with us, and she's very much in the I can do it myself stage. And that's appropriate when you're 3. You want to be able to, seriously, to be able to navigate the world and make decisions and tie your own shoes and do your own zipper and cut your own meat. The things that we learn, it's necessary to be able to survive effectively. But at some point, that self-reliance can be taken to an extreme where you exclude possibilities and you start to fossilize your thinking. And, different way of talking about self-talk is, you kind of smoke your own dope. You believe your own stories.
Yeah. And press releases.
Yeah.
Used to say, believe your own press releases too,
Yeah, eat your own dog food. I mean, there's different ways of talking about this, but there's strength in vulnerability, and there's also strength in choice and intention. So back to your idea of what I choose not to spend any time on. Mm-hmm. I think that's incredibly healthy. I give myself permission to be curious, but I don't give myself permission to live down the rabbit hole. I have criteria that I establish to say, is this going to go somewhere or not? And the focus that I use is based on kind of my mantra. And my mantra that I use throughout the day is what wants to happen here. And when I'm connected to that energy, as opposed to I need to make something happen, or I'll look silly if I don't, or I have to do this. I try to take the words have to out of my vocabulary and replace it with choose to or want to, which makes it an active intention. But at some point, it's just not going to go anywhere. So, examples are all over the place. I get contacted by a lot of people, either directly or through relationships, and they want to talk. They want to learn. They want to potentially be in a relationship. And I most frequently say yes, unless there's a real red flag, because I'm curious. Well, it becomes obvious quickly in some cases they're just not going to go anywhere.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
And I have to be compassionate but yet direct, and say what wants to happen here is nothing. We're not going to continue our conversation. And it's happened to me a couple times in the last couple months. People are off put by it right at the beginning, but
it happened to me quite recently where I had to say to someone, you don't really want anything to change here.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very passive, and there's nothing I can do at this point in time to help you, but I'm very willing to help from a coaching standpoint. I'm very willing to help. Feel free to reach out to me when you're really ready to move forward. I mean, there's a lot of this that goes on just in our world today, Bob. I want to take a couple minutes to talk about that. But yeah, it's off-putting to them, but really you don't serve people by just keeping that conversation going on. But there's an interesting phenomenon that happens a lot. I've been tapping in, as I got podcasting going and doing this channel on learning from different communities, and there's courses you can take, and I've been into several of them, people building their online business and whatnot. And there are like groupies in these things.
Oh yeah.
And I'm in one course right now. It's how to do a membership. And there are groupies that, in the middle of the community posting area, one of the instructors said, something about their Peloton, and they went out. Several people went out and bought a Peloton.
Wow!
Now Pelotons cost over $2,000. And I'm sitting here thinking, you just have a lot of. What are you here for? There's so many people who are just getting more and more information in, and they're really, just doing it. It's sort of a rationalization to not take any forward action, or you know what I'm saying, and not make any changes. They're not. They're on the sidelines, and it's kind of disheartening sometimes to watch that. But that's kind of the way things are. Everybody wants tons of information. They got to read the latest book, or they're purveyors of a lot of knowledge, but not a lot of. They don't step into the world to bring their gift, their unique gift, into the world to make a difference. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox now.
Well, you kind of get to the essence of what great coaching is about, and that's helping people to really truly understand what the story that is uniquely theirs is. What does it include? What it doesn't include? And now I love the study of science and the study of energy, and for me, it's all about a resonant frequency. It's about finding that spot where you are clearly connected to what's uniquely yours. And one of the challenges that we find is that people aren't very good at being able to discern what that is. And they spend so much time with extrinsic ways of valuing themselves, or they're not looking inside deeply enough or frequently enough. And it requires some form of crisis often for people to really do that. Some illness or loss of job or relationship failing or something. Unfortunately, it requires some suffering before the transformation actually occurs. But never let a good crisis go to waste, as the journalists like to say.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people have been going through, taking it back to what we started the conversation around. The last year and a half has been a rolling series. It's like a rolling series of crisis, like a rolling blackout or brownout for people. You start something, it didn't work very well. You tried something else, it didn't work very well. Things are really challenging. It's hard. Well, we got another place that we can look and try to understand. So everything's a teacher, to use another tried cliche. But what is the teacher trying to tell you? What's the message that's here? And, in coaching or working with organizations, I guess I have a couple of things that kind of shape that work. One is I can't want it more for you than you want it yourself. Yeah. All I can do is invite you. I'm not responsible for your happiness. And third, I can't do your suffering for you. I'm a very compassionate, empathetic person, and it is hard to watch people go through things that are challenging, but it's also a growth opportunity. It's one of those liminal, thin moments in life where you have the chance to hear something coming to you to say, here's what your unique story actually is. Here's the resonant frequency that you're supposed to be connected to. Mm-hmm. And man, when people get there, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first stages is the stage of awareness of where they are, to get a reference of where they are. And you're shaking your head because I think you've experienced this too when you engage with some new person who knows they need to be working on something, but they don't really know where they are. They don't have a clue. And so it's unpacking that, getting sort of the light bulb to come on in terms of, I'm not make no presupposition I know where they are, but it's something that is inside of them that needs to be explored and teased out. And often, as I've said, it's these tapes that people play, these soundtracks that they're playing, and this passive voice that they're listening to, or other external voices that are installing fear into them constantly that you have to tease out. But until you do some of these things, you can't get any traction for them. Yeah. And so it's something that's quite interesting, and it's given me, since I've done coaching, it's given me kind of more, I think, some sensitivity, maybe a different kind of sensitivity to what I hear out there in the greater, world in terms of, the press or whatever. A lot of things that are said, they're not helping.
No.
It's not helping.
No, and we're very, very new into this whole idea of social media. And you talk about influencers and impression management and all the courses that are out there to say, drive up your influence. And some people, it's like professional golfers. Some professional golfers make a ton of money and some influencers make a ton of money. But in both cases, the pyramid gets really, really small.
Oh, yeah.
And it's incredibly hard to do that without selling your soul, to make it happen. But even still, what does that do? I mean, this is the crisis that a lot of people run into at some point in life. It's this idea of success versus significance. Stephen Covey, I think, said this, although somebody said it first. I don't know who it was, but you climb the ladder of success only to discover you leaned it against the wrong wall. Right? I had one of those myself about 20 years ago. All the boxes were checked, all the things, and it's like, well, this is very unsatisfying. I come home and I'm tired and my ego is boosted. Gosh, lots of egoic stroking. But the true essence of who I am and what I'm here to do is just lost. And finding a path to that, again, that energy resonance that is uniquely ours, often takes something like that, where there's a very dissatisfying end result for something that you've devoted a significant amount of time and energy toward.
Yeah, you really unpacked that a lot in episode number 1. I'm going to point up here and put a card up there for episode number 1. Did a great job of that. It's very true. Very true, Bob. Wow. And I think maybe we're a little bit more sensitive to it, that, when we were younger, you think you're going to live forever. And now we're starting to think a little bit more, maybe a little more sensitivity towards legacy and sort of significance. And from that perspective, I think we start to focus in on those things a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to the word I use is intentionality, Joe, which is an active choice. It is it is a decision process that you go through where you choose among potentially great options, 1A and 1B, but where are your intentions set? So how you choose to live your life, and what messages do you want to have resonate with people, and so on, and becoming aware of, as you said, the awareness of where you are and what you're doing and how it's affecting things. So that's a lot where this video series comes in, is to help people be able to unpack some of that.
And now, and I think, how many of those do you recall? How many you put out? Was it like 6 or?
Yeah, I think I'm up to, there's 6 that are posted on the website, and I'm working on a number of them all the time. And they're short. They're like 2-3 minutes. They're something you can just watch and remember and move on. So yeah.
And where would they find them? They're on.
Again, teamtipton.com/videos.
Okay.
Not terribly complicated and pretty easy to spell, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll put a link in the show notes as well. And so you can, the intention is to keep putting these out for a bit anyway, at least.
Yeah, it's as the spirit moves, and as I run across a circumstance that really helps people with something, or helps me with something. So they're easy to record. If you like the background I've got now, it looks very similar. It's very easy to do and fast to put out, but they're designed to be, tune-ups, check-ins. Watch them again when you find yourself in a circumstance. So another one that I recently put out there is dealing with overwhelm. I came to discover there's actually a real word called whelm. I didn't realize that was a real word. I thought I was just underwhelmed or overwhelmed, and didn't know we could have the right amount of whelm, but it just means immersion or being in the middle of. And when we're overwhelmed, often what happens is we're hitting the rev limiter, to use a tachometer kind of a metaphor, or a processor metaphor. We run to the maximum speed that we have in our processor. There's no more we can go. And that's where circular self-talk gets in, and we just start auguring our ways in. So it's a very simple thing. You don't have to watch the video. I'll tell you what the content is right here, right now. It's a simple saying that I have that helps me get refocused and become present and look at disrupting or having an interrupt come into my self-talk. Here it is. You ready? I say to myself, are you doing the best you can with what you have right in front of you right now? And if I can authentically say that I am, there's nothing more I can ask of myself. So stop the self-flagellation, stop the whataboutism, stop the impossible comparisons, stop the put your cape away. That's another way that I like to think about it. Put your cape away and be human. Admit that you're doing the best you can. Now, if I'm not doing the best I can and I'm just dialing it in, I have a different conversation with myself. But it's this idea of self-kindness, Joe. Give yourself a frickin' break. Life can be hard, and things that we do are difficult. And give yourself some love, some compassion to say, yeah, you're doing the best you can right now. Maybe that's not A+ work. Maybe that's B or B+ work. Perish the thought that you actually do B or B+ work once in your life. But we don't give ourselves a break. What we do instead is we've built this fictional fantasy person that is capable of doing anything. And we should make it look effortless too, Joe. If we follow the advertising and social media and the influences that are out there, we should make it look simple and easy. And sometimes it is really hard.
That's a soundtrack. That's a tape that plays in the background, right? Constantly.
Totally.
And I've one of the classes I took in the Maxwell team, the faculty member was using, and this isn't anything new, nothing new under the sun, but visualize, a little creature on your shoulder. You've got one creature over there going, you can't do it. You can't do it. You're going to fail. It's not going to be the way it should be.
Right. And
we have these kind of voices, and the one we're talking about right now is the naysayer voice, or you don't measure up. You're not good enough voice constantly. You haven't tried hard enough. So it's being intentional, I guess, is what you're saying about putting the other programming, do your own programming here, right? Take charge of your thinking and your mindset here.
Well, that's advice has been around for centuries. There's nothing new there either.
Right.
But the process of giving yourself permission to do it, I think, is contextual and circumstantial. It's situational. And a lot of people have just put themselves into, I have to survive over the last year and a half. Do whatever it takes just to make it. And now we have the opportunity to say, we've made it. For everyone watching this, or listening to this, your track record at making through bad days is 100%. You've made it through all of them. Mm-hmm. You are here. Now what? And the now what question comes into intentionality. So what tapes do you want to play? One of my favorite examples of this, there's a book called My Stroke of Insight by Jill Bolte Taylor. She suffered a massive stroke, and it basically shut down the left side of her brain. Well, the interesting thing about her is that she's, or was, I'm not sure what she's doing now, this was a while ago, but she was a brain anatomist working for Harvard University. She understood the brain extremely well. And she knew what was happening to her in the middle of what was occurring. Her training was telling her what was happening. But by the time it was over, she'd lost the left side of her brain. She couldn't think logically. She couldn't do formulas. She couldn't make her way through a calendar. And over the course of the next 7 years, she decided what she was going to put back into her operating system and into her programming. Intentionally, she decided what was going to go back and what she was not going to put back. That's an extreme example for sure. And by the way, she's got one of the most watched TED Talks ever. It's fantastic. But we have that choice every day. It's back to this card game. What tape do we want to run? And here's another one of the tools that we have too. It's another one of the short videos that's out there, is this idea of the 3 levels of awareness. The first level of awareness is you just did what you've always done. Dang. My self-talk was circular. I got myself caught in this trap. Well, at least you realized it after the fact. That's great. Second level of awareness is you're in the middle of doing what you always do. Oh, pops into your awareness. It's like, I can make a different choice right here, right now. Will I? Third level of awareness is you predict that you're likely to be in a circumstance where you're going to do what you've always done, and you decide to do something else. The old proverbial story of I walked down the street, fell in a hole, took me hours to get out. Next day, walked down the same street, fell in the same hole. You can choose to take a different street. Yeah. But when we're adrenalized and when we're overwhelmed and when life is just pouring on top of us and expectations are everywhere and we don't feel like we have the ability to choose, like this person I was working with this week, that's something that is an opportunity for an interrupt. All possibilities exist simultaneously. If you look at a quantum way of addressing the world, all of them. But which one do we choose and why? That's where it becomes really interesting in what we put into our lives.
Very interesting. Do you find that people tend to feel as though they don't have control of things that they do, and that they do have control of things that they don't?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. One thing we're always in control of, Joe, is how we feel about things. No one can make me feel anything without my involvement, without my participation, regardless of the circumstance. No matter what's happening, I'm in charge of how I feel about it. And that, frankly, is an incredibly powerful way to live. I'm not going to get dragged into somebody else's drama. I'm not going to get pulled into toxicity or negativity. I'm going to attract myself towards places that accelerate my energy and people that make me feel seen and heard and appreciated. Again, that's all back to that awareness. And unfortunately, I don't know that enough people give themselves permission to really dig into how they feel about things.
And what do you think is some of the barriers that you've noticed into them discovering that they can and actually practicing giving themselves permission, right? Because these concepts are talked about a fair amount out there.
Oh, yeah.
Well, but how does a person move into a place where they're really being intentional, making better choices?
Well, let's talk about one of the barriers. The biggest barrier is fear. And it's fear of a variety of things, but often it's fear of success. It's fear of of actually being happy and joyful and fulfilled. You know, people talk about that a lot, but when it comes to what are you willing to do in order to get there? No, I'd really rather hold on to my limiting beliefs. I'd rather be part of something that I understand and have experienced for much of my life. It's scary to be able to break out of that and actually choose intentionally. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know if you watch America's Got Talent. A lot of people do, a lot of people don't. But just this past week, there was a singer on America's Got Talent, and she was told that she has a 2% chance to live. She's dealing with cancer. She came out and told her story. I mean, she's an amazing singer and songwriter besides that, but she said to the camera, 2%'s not 0%. Mm. I still have hope. There's still a possibility here. That's pretty powerful. And boy, that's a different kind of self-talk.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. But I think that there's a huge amount of inertia and wrapped into what is same, right? And we are pre-wired for not taking potentially what we believe to be dangerous actions.
Yeah.
And so I think fear is huge. It's just gigantic because we tend to amplify it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we echo chamber it too.
Sure,
Joe.
Well, it's like resonant frequency. You can have a compounding additive effect. The more you echo chamber it, it gets louder and louder. You know?
That's right. Yeah. And the more fluency it gains, and what I mean by that is the easier it is to agree with it and continue to stay inside of it. Taken to an extreme, it's like being in a cult. You just simply don't know that there's a different view out there, and you just simply are completely absorbed by what's going on. You buy into it so strongly that anything that doesn't sound like it, smell like it, look like it just doesn't exist. So unfortunately,
I think the self-talk tends to also the more you talk about echo chamber, I'm just going to chase this idea a little bit. I think that it actually physically restructures brain pathways too. So I think that it's kind of like wearing a groove in your floor, and then everything channels down that groove. You physically rewire and support that. And so,
Yeah, and that's hard. I'm an amateur when it comes to brain science, but I'm fascinated by it.
Too.
And one of the things that I've learned, I think, over the years, that our brains are designed to conserve energy. It is part of our biological makeup, and changing your neural pathways takes a boatload of energy, depending upon how deep that groove in the floor is, to use your metaphor. And that's something that our brains resist. What they'd rather do is take the path of least resistance. So that's where intentionality comes in. Yes, there's a groove in my floor here when it comes to my self-talk about, worthiness or appropriateness, or whether it's meant for me or whatever. Okay, I'm going to turn my awareness 20 degrees to the left. Yes, the groove in the floor still is there, but I'm going to make a new path. So I find the two biggest reasons why people don't shift, as you talk about that, is it's daunting. It looks like it's very, very hard to do, and it can be. So they stop before they start. Or the other is they're just simply afraid of the unknown, and they're unwilling to pack the bags and plan the trip because of that.
Yeah. So this is powerful, and I'm just thinking, if we step back and think about messages to leaders, you've been giving videos out there for people to consume and to learn from, and sort of get their thinking changed to help them, but also leaders have a responsibility for the people they lead, right? And some of the conversations I've had with these CIOs and others recently who lead others is, how do you engage them in a way that you never had to before? I mean, you could argue that a good leader would always be mindful of the energy demands of placing on people, or always be mindful of the individual and have care for the people who they lead. But going through this period in the last year or so with this pandemic and everything going back to zero and everything changing and people grappling with challenges that they haven't had to grapple with before. And I have said it in some of the meetings I've had that I don't think many leaders are equipped for how to lead in this kind of environment.
Right.
And not to be to overgeneralize, but it is a lot easier when everyone's in the same office, because you tend to be reminded, oh, there goes Fred. Oh, he doesn't look so good right now. Maybe I should reach out to him and see what's going on, right?
Yep.
You have to, as a leader, think about the challenges you're having, but also then say, okay, what about the folks that are in my community here that I'm responsible for? So I'm wondering what thoughts you might have about that, for leaders in particular, managers or leaders, formal or informal, right? Doesn't have to be in a company, doesn't have to be anything like that. It's just, you've got people you care for. So
right.
What do you think, Bob, about that angle?
Well, it's both simple and a small thing, but it's not easy. So the simple thing is empathy. Empathy is, I think, the most important quality of a successful leader. Whether you're leading yourself, you're leading your family, you're leading a team, you're leading an organization, empathy is necessary to be able to understand and make decisions, to plan, to build teams, to deliver things. And what I mean by empathy, and the difference between that and sympathy is I'm observing your circumstance and I say, oh, that sucks for you. That's really hard for you. Empathy is I'm going to spend some time walking in your shoes to see what actually happens with you, for you, around you, and so on. And a leader that isn't doing that for themselves, a lot of the stuff we've already talked about in this conversation is, if you're not aware, you can't lead somebody someplace where you aren't yourself or haven't been yourself. You can't do it. It just comes off as hollow. It comes off as mechanistic. And people see that. It's a technique that you're using as opposed to an authentic story where you're empathizing with my situation based upon something that's happened to you. So this is where a level of awareness and vulnerability and intention is critical for a leader today. People are in different places. People need the opportunity to feel like they've been heard, that their circumstances understood, and taken into account when it comes to moving forward. So another one of the videos up there is how to thrive in a hybrid environment. As organizations go back to work, what's happening for many of them, maybe most of them, is they're getting the worst of both. They're getting the worst of in-person and the worst of virtual simultaneously. And they don't realize it because they're just trying to do what they do in a meeting room and include some people on a video camera. Well, that's terrible for the people on the video camera. Empathize with them. Yeah, they're not seeing the side conversations and the note passing and the expressions on people's faces and the body language. You got to report that to people and tell people in the room to stop doing it. Quit having side conversations because the people online can't tell. Simultaneously, the people online are going private chat and flaming people that are talking, and this evil conversation going back and forth that the people in the room have no concept that's happening. Right. So call things like that out. Manage the room in such a way that you're empathizing with what the experience is like for those that are both in person and the people that are online. And does that take more energy? Yes, it does. Yes. But it's required in the world that we're in right now to have highly effective teams that are delivering great results. Otherwise, it just turns into the worst of both, as I said. It just spins out of control and people wonder why you're not getting things done well. So empathy, Joe, is the process of I feel what it's like for you and I incorporate that into my decision making about what's going on.
And it shows up in the real world in your actions.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you go back to 2008, 2010, when the economy was so horrible, really interesting research. And wish I could remember where it was, but the number of sociopaths that got promoted during that period of time was disproportionate to the percentage of sociopaths in our society. You know, somewhere between 2-3% of all the world are on the spectrum. The number that were leaders back then, because they had to put ice water in their veins and they had to do the up in the air thing like George Clooney, the movie, and they just had to make these hard decisions. Okay, that's over. Now what? And what's happening, I think the reason why so many people are choosing to leave their jobs now is because very little empathy is coming their direction from the leaders that they're working for. So
there's a big need there. Keep those videos coming.
Well, I'm working on it. I've got ideas for like 3 more through our conversation here. So
well, this has been a great conversation. I'm wondering if there's some closing thoughts. I don't want to cut you off, but I'm just wondering if there's some key things that come to mind that you want to say for those listening in. To consider.
I guess in a way to kind of close out the conversation, I'll go back to the energy management as the new time management and put an emphasis on that. We only have so much energy to devote to things throughout the day, and being as aware as possible about the things that accelerate your energy and the things that deplete your energy. We have things we have to do that we don't enjoy. That's just part of life on planet Earth. Well, make sure that you have the energy necessary to be able to make that happen. If you were to take one thing away from this conversation, be intentional about how you spend your time by being aware of what it does to your energy and make decisions about that. Your life is going to change. I promise you, and you'll find yourself surprised at the end of the day how much you have left, and your ability to feel successful navigating your way through each day is profoundly different for people. So that's my hope. Is that take your day really like a 52 card deck.
It's really very fundamental of all these different shifts and changes and intentional actions, changing all those things take energy. So we need to have a pool of resource that we can use in an intentional way.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that really does incorporate everything we've talked about.
Yeah, to go back to quantum physics for a moment, you know, the theory of string theory.
You're going to do the Schrodinger wave equation for me? I do remember working that problem.
Yeah, let's not talk about the actual equation. Let's just get to the idea that at the fundamental level, everything in the universe is simply energy. Everything. So if we're on top of that and intentionally managing it, gosh, it changes everything in our universe. So, awesome. You know, Joe, it's always great to be with you. I'm so glad we've had.
I love these conversations, Bob. It's great. So for you guys listening in, or watching the video, I will put some of these nuggets, these references in the show notes. And again, you can look up those videos and check them out. They're not a big investment in time. I think you'll be glad you invested your energy into watching these key messages from Bob. And as he brings forth insights from decades of leadership experience and personal introspection to keep showing up every day a better version of himself. A guy I truly appreciate. Bob, thank you so much for coming back on Titans of Transition.
Hey, thanks for joining me today on Titans of Transition. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please check the show notes for additional information. Also, please like and subscribe to this channel.